Well, it's a real pleasure to be able to spend some time with someone that knows a little bit about what's going on at one of the larger water bodies very close to the Edmonton area. It's a recreation site pretty well year round. And as we get into it today, we are going to get some new information about a boat launch, as well as talk a little bit about some of the other activities that the Wabamun Watershed Management Council is up to. And it's a real pleasure to have Neil Fleming. He's one of the members of this group. Join us. Neil, it's a beautiful winter day today in the Edmonton area. I hope you're enjoying it as well. And thanks so much for being able to spend a little time with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Or Michael, sorry. As I look out the window, it's snowing pretty heavily down at my end. So yeah, a true typical Alberta winter day.
So we wanted to get into talking about the new old boat launch that you posted a little while ago. That it looks like it's going to be happening and opening hopefully here soon. But a couple of other events have sort of taken over, I guess, the spotlight. The first thing is we had a couple of vehicles go through the ice recently, and it really does underscore the need for folks to pay attention to what's happening on the ice before they drive out onto the lake to do some ice fishing.
Yeah, always a problem. I just got a little bit of a reply as to what happened there, and apparently the article is not as accurate as it could be. Where the spot that those two vehicles went through apparently typically never freezes on the lake. So it's just people not understanding the dangers in and around the lake. And that was a spot at the railway trestle that crosses near the provincial park. So not as great a danger as we've been out on the lake a number of times in the last couple of months, and our last doing water sampling on the lake, and our last drill site, the depth of the lake is 24 inches. So that should handle just about any vehicle. That's pretty well consistent over the entire area of the lake.
So it really does underscore the requirement that you need to kind of do your homework and figure out where traditionally safe spots are to cross if you are planning to go out in a vehicle.
Yes, there's lots of information available as to what depth of ice is required for different activities, and I think it's a minimum of 14 inches to support a vehicle. So it's just common sense. Yeah.
It's got to make you kind of you guys have gone through a lot over the years, not the least of which was that major derailment and that whole issue. And then when something like this happens, two vehicles go through. I mean, you've got gasoline, you've got oils and all that type of thing that could leach from those vehicles. Kind of a disheartening scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think, I could maybe give you a little bit of a background on those issues. As you mentioned at the beginning, Wabamun is about 80 kilometers west of the city of Edmonton, just off of Highway 16, Yellowhead Highway. So easily accessible to well over 1 million people. And certainly with COVID and even before COVID, we're seeing a huge demand for outdoor recreation. So it's putting lots of pressure on the lake. My understanding is the boat sales were up something like 20% in Edmonton last year. So really amplifying the pressure on the lake. Currently, there are only 2 sanctioned boat launches on the lake. One is at the village of Wabamun, and the other is at the provincial park. So what we're finding is that on busy weekends, there can be hours-long lineups for people to get access to the lake. So as a result, people are trying to find alternate locations to launch their boats, and this is driving them to the non-sanctioned boat launches around the lake, which in most cases are just the terminus of range roads where they meet the lake. And of course, they've never been developed as boat launches. And as such, in order for people to avoid getting stuck when they're launching their very large boats, we're finding that they're powering their boats on and off of their trailers, which is causing all kinds of damage and erosion to the shoreline and the bed of the shore. And as well, these sites do not have any facilities of any kind. There's no garbage facilities, there's no toilet facilities, and certainly there's no parking. So as a result, there's lots of conflict between these people that are launching their boats and the local residents, with stories of people that are throwing their garbage on, and some people even toileting on these properties. And not to mention the parking restrictions, which can cause difficulty for these people and maybe even emergency vehicles to get to these points, because the roads are littered with cars and trucks. So it's been an ongoing problem for many, many years, and we're hopeful that this is a bit of a resolution to the problem. You mentioned that the boat launch that we're talking about today was fully operational up until the train derailment in 2005, which dumped a whole bunch of bunker oil into the lake. And TransAlta at that point was using this location as intake for their boilers for their coal-fired power plant. And they were worried about oil getting into their boilers, so they sealed off the end of the canal and effectively defeated the boat launch. So we're really anxious to see this thing coming back into.
So cutting to the chase, where are you at with that process? What are expectations in terms of this boat launch being reopened?
It's been a long, hard process. I was looking back through the drawing earlier that's been produced for it, and that was done in 2017. So it's been in the works for probably about 5 years now. And I give all the credit in the world to TransAlta and Parkland County for coming together to make this happen. Also credit to one of our past chair, Stan Franklin. He personally brokered the deal between TransAlta and Parkland to get it open. Parkland saw the need for it, and TransAlta, I think, sees an opportunity to extend some goodwill to the community. And I have to say that they have been really good players and good partners with us in our activities. So as to where we are today, the latest correspondence I have is that all the necessary permits are in place. They're preparing the documents to go out to tender. And we're really optimistic that construction is going to start this summer. Pretty much a long shot, I would think, to have it that it would be open towards the end of the year. But I suppose that's not out of the realm of possibilities. But hopefully next year we'll see it working.
In terms of the cost associated with this project, is this something that residents in and around the Wabamun area would be contributing towards, or is it strictly coming from the County of Parkland?
It's all County of Parkland, and I say I give them credit for that. They're going to the ratepayers asking for money to put this open, to get this open. So TransAlta has donated the land, and Parkland is building the facility.
And in terms of, I guess, the number of boats that you anticipate to use this facility when it is completed, and the amount of pressure it's going to relieve off the main site in Wabamun, is it going to be a substantial number, do you think?
It'll really depend on how effective people are in launching the boats. This is an activity that most people only undertake once or twice a year, so it's a process. Wabamun has 3 ramps going in. The provincial park has 2 ramps going. This is just going to have 1, so it's not going to offload a lot of activity, but it will should relieve the pressure a little bit. More importantly, I think is what it's going to do is it's going to allow the county to look at closing or restricting access to these informal sites and the damage and the conflict that arises there. And from our perspective, from an educational perspective, it'll give us 3 main points that we can focus on to provide some education to lake users of the danger of aquatic invasive species being introduced at those sites, whether it's quagga, zebra mussels, or Eurasian milfoil, or the flowering rush that we're seeing at Lake Isle, just 10 minutes north. So there's lots of dangers to the lake, and it will give us an opportunity to maybe engage with some of the lake users at that point.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Neil, in the sense that, again, coming back to the proximity to the Edmonton area, the amount of traffic that lake receives, give us a sense of some of the threats that you folks, you mentioned that you do water quality testing on a fairly regular basis. Talk a little bit about sort of the overall health of Wabamun as we sit here and talk today.
Well, we had a State of the Watershed report done back in 2013. And basically, that was just a snapshot of the condition of the lake, analyzed a number of different parameters like water quality, quantity, activity throughout the lake, all kinds of different things. And the takeaway was the lake was in pretty good shape. It was fair. But it is a typical prairie lake. It is referred to as a headwater lake, meaning it's different from a lake in BC, which are basically just expanses of rivers down there. Wabamun, the only water that flows into the lake is from direct precipitation or water that flows off the immediate watershed, which is only about 3 times the actual size of the lake. So the end result of that is that the water turnover in the lake is incredibly slow. Water residency in the lake can be up to 100 years. As in BC, it could be months or years at the most. In Wabamun, it can be as long as I say 100 years. So basically, whatever goes in the lake stays in the lake. So that's what we have to be really careful. Get back to your comment about the cars going through the ice and the fuels that enter the lake as a result of that are garbage around the lake. And so it's a real learning education to get people aware that their activities, although small, they throw a beer can in the lake or whatever, it's all cumulative over the years, and it all adds up. And we have to really be careful.
Of course, the lake has also has been the subject of many debates on pike versus walleye fishing. I know that a number of years ago, I caught my largest pike on a fly line, which was just a remarkable experience. And then subsequent to that, I've been out and I've caught numerous walleye, nothing huge, but an awful lot of them. Give us a sense of where that conversation is going these days in terms of, the debate of one fish species over another, catch and release versus catch and keep, trophy versus non-trophy. I know I've opened a big can of worms here, Neil. I apologize.
It is a big can of worms. It's one of the most, we talk about the issues that we deal with most. And number one is lake water level, and number 2 is fishing. So we're there. But historically, we have to believe that there have been walleye in the lake. The studies show that back in the early 1920s, they were there. But following the construction of the power plant, it seemed that the walleye populations dropped right off. They were overfished. And there was a number of attempts to reintroduce walleye into the lake, and they all failed until the power plant was taken down. And that's the Wabamun power plant that actually used the lake directly for cooling. So what the suspicion is that the reintroduction of the walleye was unsuccessful because the lake was too warm. The fry would hatch too early. They would head out into the lake and into the areas where it was still frozen. There'd be no food available for them, so that they would perish. Following the decommissioning of the power plant, the walleye have just taken off, just exploded to the detriment of the pike. I caught a 36-inch pike out there a number of years ago too, and we're not seeing those large ones anymore. According to the fisheries biologist, Alberta Environment Parks, it's still just a balancing act between the different populations to find out what species is going to be most successful. Walleye really are taking off right now. They did a major fish study in the fall, and they reported that there's good numbers of whitefish, which is good to hear as well. Pike are down. Walleye are doing extremely well, as anecdotally everybody would report. So they're going to be coming forward with some recommendations. There's a survey out right now asking people what their thoughts are as to how they think fisheries should be managed around the lake. So following the results of that survey, they'll make some recommendations, and we're thinking that they may allow people to take on one or two. But getting back to our conversation about being accessible to well over 1 million people, I think once you open it up for fishing, you're going to have to be really careful with the amount of people that are going to want to be on the lake. So all those things have to be balanced out. So I'm confident that the fisheries people will make the right decisions.
Well, you mentioned that the lake takes about 100 years to turn over. I would offer the argument that it'll probably take that long before this discussion between walleye and pike is ever resolved. Neil, before I let you go, if there are folks out there that would like to get more information about the work that your council is doing, and maybe they can lend some support or volunteer for upcoming projects, how do they get in touch with you folks?
Our website, wwmc.ca, Wabamun Watershed Management Council.ca. It's a really well developed website. We're very, very proud of it. Easily to get the information you want, any history you want for the lake is on there. And there's an info page, how to get involved. Click on that button. We're always happy to have you throw a little money our way if you're so inclined. And of course, our Facebook, we encourage people, if they're on Facebook, to follow us there. One other point that I would be remiss if I didn't mention, maybe at the risk of opening up another can of worms, is there's been lots of controversy about no boat launches being on the west end of the lake, and in particular, the closure of the launch at the summer village of Seba Beach. And full disclosure, I'm a property owner and summer resident at Seba Beach, but that launch, the Summer Village took it upon themselves to close that launch about 3 or 4 years ago, I'm thinking now. And to my mind, it was the right decision. That launch was developed 60, 70 years ago when a really large boat was a 16-footer with a 40 horsepower motor on the back of it. And the topography in that area just does not allow the launching of larger boats. People are having to launch or back their cars into the water 50 meters or more to get their boats to float. That and the fact that there's no parking, and it's right adjacent to the pavilion that houses there's a children's playground in the area, as well as the farmers market that it's housing there. So it's just plain dangerous. So, another whole area to get into, and we would be happy to talk with anybody who would discuss that further as well. Yeah.
I guess all the more reason why this new boat launch is needed, and I have no doubt that you folks are anxiously awaiting its new opening. Again, Neil, thanks so much. We really appreciate the time, and we'll have to touch base with you maybe when this the Sundance boat launch is open and see how it's being received.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for your interest in the lake, and really appreciate your efforts to help us out.